Meeting to order, the reinvestment zone number 2. Ms. Huerta with Sarah stepping in, if you could call the meeting to order. Call the roll.
Good morning, Judge Scott. And good morning, Commissioner. Yes.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
so
Sorry.
Chairman Dan
You're good.
Suckley,
Here.
Board members Libby Averett is absent. Roland Barrera.
Here.
Oh, you here? Good, okay. Roland Barrera,
Here.
Sylvia Campos is in the back. Brent Chesney. Paulette Guajardo.
Present.
Gail Hernandez. Also, okay. Michael Hunter.
Here.
Jim Klein. Okay, Mr. Klein is absent. Mike Pesley. Here. Everett Roy.
Present.
Connie Scott. Okay, we do have a quorum present to conduct the meeting, sir.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to make public comment today? Anybody online, Rebecca, submitted anything?
No, sir.
No? Thank you. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the October 25th and November 1st, 2022 meetings.
So moved.
Second.
I have a first and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I'm sorry, financial report.
Yes. Good morning, Board Chairman Heather Hurlbert, Director of Finance. The financial report today is for the period ending, for the 3 months ending December 31st, 2022. So one thing to remember on the financials is that when we adopted the budget for fiscal year 23, at that point, the decision had not been made to extend the TIRZ. So what was included in the budget was just the revenues, but we have not included any operating expenses, and so that will be, we're hoping to bring that back in April or May for a recommended budget that will then go to council for amendment to create the actual operating budget for the TIRZ as we decide on what those programs are and what the contribution amount is. So what I'm reporting on today is just the revenues and then the ending fund balance. So we did begin the year with an $8 million fund balance. That is an unaudited fund balance, but we do not anticipate any type of significant changes to that fund balance. Revenues collected year to date are a little over $3 million. The bulk of the property taxes usually come in January and into February, so we do anticipate that we will continue collecting against that number. As it stands right now, we have an ending fund balance of $11.1 million. And of that, there is a $500,000 maintenance reserve that was put in place by a former board that was for maintenance to the Packery Channel. So we reserve to set that aside. So there are, in addition to what is in the actual TIRZ fund, there is money that has been moved over for specific CIP projects. And so we do have 6.8, almost $6.9 million that is remaining for the Park Road 22 bridge. Of that, 2.5 million has been spent. That project is continuing and should be completing before the end of the calendar year. And then specifically for Packery Channel, we had money, almost $5 million set aside for the city's match for the restoration of the channel due to the damage that was done by Harvey. FEMA is paying for a portion of that, and then the city had a portion of that too. In addition to that, there was $4.3 million that was set aside for dredging that will occur after the restoration is complete. And then we had set aside money for monitoring, which has been almost fully expended. We did discuss setting aside specific amounts and have included that in the project and financing plan for the ongoing maintenance, dredging, monitoring of Packery Channel to about a total of $36 million, I believe, over the next 20 years. And so that has already been designated for that. So that does conclude my presentation on the financials, and I'm available for any questions.
No questions? Thank you, Ms. Hurlbert.
Sure.
All right, moving on to the agenda items. The first item, number 3, is going to be removed. We will move on to presentation items. Number 4, briefing on public infrastructure associated with the Lake Padre development project.
Mr. Chairman, can we have some explanation from staff as to why that was removed from the agenda?
Sure, we're going to bring this back for consideration in April. There was a negotiation point that we thought we had fully vetted and agreed upon, that upon review by the developer, there were still some questions on it. So instead of trying to hurriedly amend that this morning, we want to go ahead and bring that back for consideration in April.
Okay, well, I think it's appropriate to have those explanations before
Sure.
we just jerk something. Thank
Sure.
you.
Agree. Agree.
That would be a question for
No,
Rebecca.
we don't need, to. Well, staff is just pulling it from the agenda. Councilman, it's a recommendation, just pull it from the agenda. You could if you want to, but it's not necessary.
I agree with you, Mr. Chesney, but they do it different over here.
Okay. It's seconded by Mr. Pesley. Is that right?
You want to second that?
No, I think we need to make sure, is that what he's saying? Just, I don't know if he made that motion, Rebecca.
Sorry?
I don't know that he made that motion. I mean, are you making the motion? I can't, can you turn your,
It has 2 buttons.
Agenda item that's been posted, so I think the proper rule is to just table it. So
Yeah,
I
so
make a
he's-
motion to
that's
table
what
to
I heard
whenever
him say.
staff wants to bring it back.
so is that,
Okay, so a motion by Board Member Chesney, seconded by Board Member Pusley. All those in favor to table it, say
So
aye.
April? Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Hurlbert. Can we move on to presentation, please? Thank you.
Sure. So this morning, we have a presentation on the development, the Lake Padre development. We do have one of the developers, Ross Pardo, is here, who can answer any specific questions that I may not be able to answer, or any specific questions you may have for them. They are moving forward with the development of Lake Padre, which is on the opposite side of Park Road 22 from the Whitecap development that we've done a lot of talking about. So these first couple of slides just kind of walk through some of the recent projects that have been completed by the developer. They have experience in developing hotels, office, mixed-use commercial, along with restaurants and multifamily projects. And so this is just a review of some of the projects that have been done. See if I can get my slides to advance here. There we go. Okay. So the Lake Padre development, the total project size is 102 acres. And I'm sorry, there have been a couple of adjustments that have been made to the presentation, some additions. And so Sarah is handing out a hard copy. So it does differ slightly from what's in your packet, but what will be on the screen will be the most updated presentation. And we just added some additional information. None of the substantive information has changed from what was presented in the packet. I think Sarah's going to make a couple more copies for us. So the total project side is 102 acres. Over 50 acres of that is commercial. The total development, including the water bottom, is 102 acres. So over half of that is the water bottom and the lake. The proposed development includes retail and entertainment district along the canal. The Phase 1 vertical construction will begin in the fourth quarter of 2023. There has already been significant groundwork along with the dredging and the bulkheading of the lake, along with the infrastructure, which should be completed within the next several months. Based off of the economic impact study that was done a couple of years ago, they estimated that the development will bring at a completion over 500 permanent jobs, and then will produce over $7.5 million in annual tax revenue to the city complete. And so that is a combination of hotel occupancy tax, sales tax, and then the ad valorem tax from the development. So the next slide is an overview of the development. So to the top of the page, you have Park Road 22. To the right of the page, you have Highway 361. And so this is situated right there at the corner of 361 and Park Road 22. And so we'll go into more detail on what the specific parts of the development are, the specific aspects of it. So here's a visual representation of what the different aspects are. So starting at the left side, which would be the south side of the development, there is a proposed marina development. Moving into apartment and multifamily development along the Park Road 22, along the canal that is being built under the Park Road 22 bridge. There is a development of a canal walk, which will be a mixed-use entertainment a restaurant area developed along that canal walk. Then moving into along the edge of the lake will be a hotel development. Moving further north is the Cove, which will be a multifamily townhome and condominium type development. Moving then into the Cove Shops, which will be mixed-use retail along that Highway 361 corridor. And then finally, the Channel side, which is the single-family development. So this is being proposed in several phases over about the next 12 years, and we'll see a visual representation of what that phasing looks like. The infrastructure phase is under construction right now and is expected to be completed in the second quarter of 2023. And so the infrastructure that is put into the ground is an estimated about $11.5 million in investment. That does not include the almost $6 million that had already been invested in the property for the excavation and bulkheading of the lake area. Phase 2, which will begin in year 1, which is 2023, we'll have a projected 5-year build-out, is an estimated investment of $188 million. This would include the marina, some of the apartments, the hotel, and then the canal area, entertainment area, along with the golf cart and pedestrian bridge development. Phase 2, which is a projected 3-year build-out, which will consist of the canal residential and retail and then parking areas, is a projected investment of $78 million. Phase 3, which is a projected 5-year build-out, is the multifamily and apartments, which is an estimated investment of $196 million. Phase 4, which would have a 5 to 7-year build-out, which will primarily be the single-family along with the retail and the channel side area, which is an estimated $172 million in investment. And then Phase 5, which is the retail area, the shops, the grocery, and the hotel, has an investment of $61 million. Now, these are estimated build-outs, and we understand that these may not follow those exact timelines depending on the environment, but these are the estimated build-out. So on the next slide, you'll see just a visual representation of how these phasing will happen and how they're estimated to begin and when they're estimated to be complete. So right now, the estimation is that the complete build-out will be completed by calendar year 2035. So the next slide then also gives you a visual representation of what the phases look like superimposed over the development. So it does primarily start to the south, and the phasing moves towards the north to to Highway 361. So the developer is asking for requests for reimbursement for public improvements. The request includes investment for the promenade area, which will show a visual representation of what that will look like. The 2 pedestrian bridges, which are over the canal, this is a visual representation on the slide of what those the 2 pedestrian bridges over the canal might look like. Along with, if you look towards the top of the picture, it would be the golf cart bridge that would go along Park Road 22 with connecting ramps down onto the canal walk and under the Park Road 22 bridge. And then the golf cart path would run along the development towards the end of the development on the south side, with the hopes that as we continue to develop that area and see more on the mobility planning, and that we would be able to connect that all the way into Whitecap. So for that mobility across there. So here's a map showing where the boardwalk area is, or the promenade area would be. That is represented in the yellow that goes around the lake area, up the canal area, and then all the way over to 361. This is over 2 miles of promenade or boardwalk that would go along this area. and that would be open to the public for public use, would connect the different areas along the development, including the public spaces. So the next is a cross-section of what the developer is planning for these promenades, promenade area. The promenade on average will be 4 to 6 feet above the water level. Most of them, depending on where they are along there, will have a 20 to 25 foot width for the promenade. Then we'll have a landscape buffer of 10 to 15 feet, which will then divide the promenade from the development areas. By stepping this up, this gets the buildings up to that, the flood, above the flood level that is required for the development. And this is a way to step that up without having a huge area that is, you know, I guess bare. So here's some other cross sections of, depending on where the promenade is along the development, what those cross sections may look like. Some of them may a little bit narrower or may have 2 different areas. Some may have the landscaping kind of in between the 2 areas or to one side. But the plan is to make this a very welcoming area with lots of vegetation and plenty of width to be able to walk along the edge. So looking at the benefits of the public infrastructure, like I mentioned, this does provide for an area of over 2 miles that is open to the public that can walk along the lake and the canal area. It does provide connectivity under the Park Road 22 bridge to the other side of Park Road 22. There will be multiple areas, open spaces planned for gatherings, farmer markets, things like that. The 2 pedestrian bridge provide connectivity over that canal from one side of the development to the other. And again, those will be open to the public. And then the golf path provides that mobility along Park Road 22 that will connect not only along Park Road 22, but under Park Road 22 through that bid bridge area, and then hopefully future access to Whitecap as we go along. So as of right now, the estimated cost for the public improvements, the promenade, open space areas, the estimated cost right now is $16.4 million. The pedestrian bridge is for 2 of those, about $2 million. The golf cart bridge is an estimated $1.2 million, and the golf cart path and ramps that we extend along Park Road 22 is a total of a little over $1 million. And so right now, the estimated public improvements within the development that the developer is asking for consideration is about $20.6 million. So that does conclude what I have prepared for the presentation. I'm available for any questions, and like I said, we have Russ Padre here who can answer any specific questions I may not be able to ask.
What's the name, what's Ross's company name? It's not noted in the package, the name of the developer.
It's Lake Padre Development.
Okay. Any questions from any of the board members? Yes. I'm sorry. Board member Guajardo?
No.
No? Oh,
I think it's Mr. Pusley.
okay. All right. Board member Pusley. Sorry.
Yeah, I just had a couple of questions, Heather, and I know these drawings are very diagrammatic at this point, but just a note that we need to make absolutely certain that these crossover walkovers maintain the same height above the water that our new bridge that's being built maintains, so that we don't lose airspace above the
Exactly.
or underneath them.
That is the intention, that all the bridges, the 2 pedestrian bridges, the golf cart bridge, and then the Park Road 22 bridge would all be at the same elevation.
Okay, so I have a specific question about the golf cart path across Park Road 22. It sounds to me like they're going to bore underneath the road. Is that right?
So no, right now, the Park Road 22 bridge has access from both sides. And so the golf cart bridge will have ramps that will go down and then connect into the passageways that have already been built under on the Park Road 22 bridge.
So they're going to be passed to do that. Are they shared by pedestrians as well? So there's.
I believe that there's 2 separate areas. I believe there's kind of a golf cart area, and then there's a pedestrian area, I believe. the way that the bridge had been designed. I know that there's multiple arches, right? And so I think that there's more than one path on either side.
Okay. Well, that would be important because you certainly don't want pedestrian traffic,
Sure.
trying to share the same area. So what's the developer ask here for the total thing? Is it the 20 million?
It is the 20 million, yes.
Okay, so have we looked at that on the financials standpoint for the TIRZ?
Yes, and so this would be similar to what we had done with Whitecap. This would be subject to reimbursement through the increment built by the development. So if the development isn't built or does not build the increment as expected, then the payout will be limited to the life of the TIRZ and/or what the amount that the development actually creates, the increment that's created.
Okay, so our projections are that the TIRZ will be able to fully fund the 20 million?
Yes, depending on the current build-out schedule, that is, and depending on what the contribution percentage is, that is decided by the board and the city council on what's going into the TIRZ would depend on the timing on that, on how quickly that would be paid off.
Okay, final question. I know we've gone back and forth a couple of times about the expansion of the TIRZ boundary. Have we made a decision on that yet, or?
As in, so we have already expanded the TIRZ boundary to include the portions of Whitecap.
Okay.
We're waiting on some information we'd gotten from the county to finalize the boundaries on the south side for the Valley Park.
Okay.
This is fully in the TIRZ. This development is fully in the TIRZ.
Okay.
So it
it's
would
covered.
qualify.
And we've expanded it all the way down to just past Bob Hall Pier, is that correct?
It will, yes. That is, we're waiting on some meets and bounds information for that legal description to be able to bring that back to city council, but that is still
That's what I thought. I didn't
intended.
think we had voted on the final.
No, you have not.
Okay.
It is an action item that we still need to take.
Okay, good. Okay. All right, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Board Member Hernandez.
Real quick question on this, thank you. One of the concerns we have on the island is, and I've been a big supporter of getting a second crossing to the island, but this is adding more development and more traffic. Have we done traffic studies to see what this would do to, what our existing infrastructure on the JFK Causeway will do? So are we looking at that as we're developing?
I can't speak specifically to that. I know that there is, not necessarily on the JFK Bridge, but I know locally within the infrastructure around developments, they are required to do development studies. But I'm not sure as far as our traffic studies, I'm not sure as to an impact on the JFK Bridge itself.
Okay, so probably going forward, any kind of development that we're bringing that's going to add more infrastructure, people, and stuff like that, we've got to be aware of how that affects traffic and how many people go. You don't design something for its daily use. You design it for its maximum use, right? Mm-hmm. So I want to make sure we're not impacting that in a negative way to where we can't get people or we can't egress people off the island in a timely fashion. So if you can include, traffic impacts, especially in times of emergency, how that would affect that. And that was kind of one of the concerns on, when we renewed the TIRZ and, making sure we're not pouring too much gasoline on development to where we can't support it infrastructure-wise. Sure. Speaking of which, we're supposed to, you said in the previous meeting that we would have some update on what the funding levels were going to be. Can you give us where that is?
So that'll be coming back in the April meeting
In
for
the April meeting?
consideration. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Councilman Roy.
So my question was on the same line of Council or Board Member Hernandez. The only thing I don't remember is I know that we talked about the alternative entrance and exit off of the island, but we haven't voted on that yet, right? We just kind of talked about it a little bit. We got public opinion on that, I think. Does anybody recall?
causeway.
But we,
Like the second causeway you're referring to, Councilman?
yes.
The council recently passed a resolution just supporting the causeway, the regional parkway and a second bridge, but I don't think that resolution listed any location.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I was trying to get the specifics on that because I was trying to envision where that cuts in with this project.
Yeah, well,
And,
the regional parkway, there's been two two detailed studies that have been done by engineering firms in the last 2 decades, or 3 decades, I should say. And the last version that was done places the bridge away further south from this development, kind of on the other end of the peninsula, or the island, I guess.
Okay.
Closer to the south side of the city, so it would come down around Rod Field, and then if this is the JFK, it'd be.
But we know at some point that's going to be reality.
Right, yeah, so
Okay.
due to Chairman Hunter, funding has been identified to begin the environmental assessments, and that's a big part of it, because it's gonna have to go across the Laguna Madre, which is a state and federal waters. So a long lead item is that, the environmental clearance, and Chairman Hunter recently has secured some funding to begin that work. So that's an important step, and we appreciate him for doing that.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? No? With no further business, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you. Thanks for everybody's participation.